everyone. First of all, let me thank HSBC for inviting me to this important event. I used to come at this forum, I think, last several years as a governor and also before as a deputy governor as well. I think it's an important opportunity for the central bank to share our views. Mostly, I'm focusing on the local, the Sri Lankan economic developments and outlook. I'm sure your resource person will talk about the regional and global, so I don't want to touch the area. So first of all, my first remarks, obviously, on the recent events and briefly on the, we all know we went through a worst economic crisis since 2022 and starting from 2021 even. And that's where we had major issues in macroeconomic management. So firstly, from our side, inflation went to 70% in September 2022. We had huge balance of payment pressures in terms of depleting official resource, depleting our external buffers to a non-existent level where we had to announce temporary debt standstill and take the leadership and initiate for the sovereign debt restructuring. And then obviously that all of the issues were directly related to the long-standing huge fiscal imbalances, which led to unsustainable sovereign debt, which was announced by the IMF in 2022, although the government did not just ignore that fact, then went on the expanding the fiscal debt and also going on the fiscal expansion. That's where we ended up in, we all know, this severe sovereign debt crisis and balance of payment crisis came together first time in 2022, and then with that we had socio-economic and socio-political issues. So that's all history. So from since then, we were embarking on a process of stabilization first. And for that, we had the prompt and coordinated implementation of suite of fiscal and monetary policy measures and the structural reform agenda supported by the IMF Extended Fund Facility, which is again a bailout package, this time, 17th time. And this arrangement, so far, when you look back, we can see it has worked very successfully, and we have been able to restore almost a macroeconomic stability from the points that we were back in 2021 and 2022. Just few points, and also as a result of this crisis, we had the worst contraction of the economy in 2022 and first half of 2023. Now we are in a process of recovery, and Sri Lanka was able to break the 6 consecutive quarters of contraction on a year-on-year basis, and now we are on the path of recovery, especially second half of 2023. Starting from there, we are now the 4th consecutive quarter reporting positive growth, and first half recorded, I think, 5%, and this year we are expecting at least well above 4% growth compared to the early expectation, even under the IMF baseline scenario, was around 2%. So we are going to overperform in this area in terms of growth. So in other areas, let me especially talk a little bit more about the monetary policy, because this is our, and financial system stability. This is the area that we are basically responsible. It's our mandate. As I mentioned earlier, very high inflation we had, and we were able to bring it down to single-digit levels within 1 year. This is the record disinflation process anywhere in the world that I have heard, very tight monetary conditions, and we were able to stabilize and bring the inflation back to very low level within a very short period. Since then, we have been able to maintain very low and stable inflation, sometimes now even below the target that we have agreed with the government, that is medium to long-term inflation target is 5%. Now we are going around the several months of deflation. I think I explain why that is the case. Is mainly because of the unexpected or kind of administrative price changes in energy, the energy pricing and petroleum pricing and some of the administrative price changes. This has nothing to do with the monetary policy, but if you look at the underlying inflation, in terms of core inflation, it is still around 3 to 4%, still below the middle range of our inflation target, but that's where even going forward, what I can see, we will come back to normal inflation regime in about 1 year's time. That's why in our monetary policy making, we take into account the current inflation and the future outlook and potential output gap, as well as the inflation outlook, both in real terms and also looking at the balance of payment situation, external vulnerabilities and external buffer situation. While taking into all these things, we now have a very robust monetary policy framework where we make evidence-based, data-driven, very scientific approach in monetary policy making that can ensure that will remain going forward. And we have been able to anchor inflation expectation very well, so that all good for the economy going forward for all the activities. So this current low inflation environment has been providing some comfort and stability to both livelihoods and business activity, mainly after some period of very high inflation. I don't mind having a kind of a very stable deflation situation for a while, so that will help economy and business to revive. So one of the important significant milestone under the program that even before that this was planned but it was not implemented is to enact the Central Bank of Sri Lanka Act, which was I think fully implemented from September 2023, and which obviously gave us sufficient independence in making monetary policy, as well as enhance our accountability to the public, parliament, and the markets. So that's a very significant development and robust monetary policy framework now we are having established in the monetary policy making. So under the new act, independence of central bank has been reinforced. First, by limiting direct monetary financing and eliminating government representations in monetary policy decision making, and thereby the monetary policy framework and governance has improved a lot. So now the monetary policy framework has been recognized and incorporated into the law as a flexible inflation targeting framework. I must mention about this because there's a lot of kind of discussion for better understanding of the monetary policy framework. The flexible inflation targeting framework that we are now adopting formally with the new Central Bank Act is seen as the best monetary policy framework we ever had in this country. So this is actually, it has been proven, this is the best monetary policy framework for Sri Lanka with our performance central banks achieving objectives in recent past, as well as not only from our evidence, all emerging markets, like the frameworks that have in similar framework like us, this has been proven to be the best monetary policy framework. So we are very proud that we have been able to implement that, the one of the best monetary policy framework we ever had in Sri Lanka, so the inflation targeting regime, under which exchange rate certainly will be determined by the market based on the market demand and supply. I also must make a comment here, exchange rate determination is now under flexible exchange rate regime, is broadly determined by the market demand and supply, and also in line with overall economic fundamentals in the medium to long term. So it does not mean, and just to make a clarification, it's not a fully floating exchange rate. It's a flexible exchange rate regime under the monetary inflation target regime. We are flexible inflation target regime. We have the right to intervene, and we certainly intervene when we want to build up our resource. We certainly intervene when there's excess volatility in the market. That is basically our duty, and we follow that approach on a very transparent basis in the market. And also we would like the foreign exchange market to be developed, to have it much more deepened and more liquid market, so that our intervention can be minimized over a period of time once market come to a high stage of more developed market like any other market. So until then, we have to have some intervention, and mainly the intervention is now focusing and limited to build external buffers in terms of official resource. That's why you have seen, even just mentioned, 6.4 billion resources that we have built out so far as a result of, while allowing flexibility in the exchange rate. You can see exchange rate appreciated from 370 to 300, now just below 300, but still we have been able to intervene to smoothen our volatility and build our resource from very low levels to comfort level, but we need to build more. I don't say that this is sufficient. We'll continue to build up our resource. It's a result of overall macro management, and this first time in the history, I think for a long period, current account of the balance of payment, that is foreign exchange income, earnings and expenditure, has generated surplus in 2023. This year also is going to generate surplus. That's overall macro fundamental, key macroeconomic fundamental in external buffers and the dividend of resource and exchange rate stability, where that reflects the 2 consecutive years of current account surplus. First time, I think, for a long period. I don't think even up to 1997, we never had this kind of current account management. But obviously, there are certain restrictions over there. Going forward, I think a lot of people ask when are going to motor vehicle relaxation. That's the only area still there are some restrictions. Then we have informed government. Then we can manage, and we are ready for the government to relax restrictions, and it's up to the government, to Minister of Finance, to decide the phase of relaxation and the timing. That's all up to the fiscal policy. We don't want to intervene there, but we have given our observations in terms of maintaining and building up external buffers while opening up all the restrictions of imports that we need imports for next phase of recovery. Should we focus more on growth? For that growth to happen, we need to have relax import restriction. Without an import restriction, businesses and economy should be able to have sufficient flow of necessary imports. So that's the overall situation. And on this monetary policy, I think I also should make a comment on the recent debate that we have seen about the money printing. I think this is good that this debate has come out. This actually came out from one of the statements made by one of the websites regularly making one of the statements, rupee 100 billion money printed by the central bank through open market operations. That usually we ignore this kind of statement, but this time the statement has escalated to a different level of public debate. And as we have seen a lot of discussions, I think this is good, very positive development, healthy debate. Now I have seen there is a much better understanding of central bank monetary operations in terms of liquidity management, in terms of monetary financing. I think that's a very positive development. I must thank people who contribute to the debate. I see a lot of the think tanks, analysts, journalists are now talking about it. Let me make clear our understanding. I think central bank is supposed to have a best understanding of what we do. It's our responsibility to explain these technically difficult things in a simple manner. So the first point I have to make is that under the new Central Banking Act, there's no room for direct monetary financing, which means the Minister of Finance cannot influence to finance the budget deficit through direct monetary financing. This is prohibited under the new Central Bank Act. So it has not happened since, I think, 2023. It will not happen going forward. So that's the first point I want to make. There will be no direct monetary financing, what we called earlier refers to money printing directly by the central bank. Having said that, all the time, central bank has a responsibility through our open market operations to manage day-to-day liquidity in the domestic rupee market, with interbank market. We have been doing this several years. This open market operation was introduced, very active open market operation, I think back in 2002. This has nothing to do with the direct monetary financing. It's all about providing sufficient liquidity for our in the interbank market, mainly under current monetary framework. But we want to target, and our instrument is short-term interest rates in the interbank market, what we call call money rate. So our objective is to maintain the call money rate in the interbank market at a rate that we think most appropriate in our view for the current monetary policy stance. For example, if we think, as you know, we announced this policy rate dual band, deposit rates and the lending rates by the central bank. We want to maintain short-term call rates in between where we think most appropriate for the time being, looking at the future monetary policy actions, looking at the future inflation. That is a key monetary policy transmission. Happens through maintaining call rate where central bank wants to maintain. This is all over the world. This is a monetary policy framework. This is how we all central banks practice. It's not nothing new for Central Bank of Sri Lanka. With the inflation targeting framework, we have now established where our decision to maintain the liquidity at certain levels, our desire to maintain short-term call rates at a certain level is completely independent and has no influence at all from anyone else. It is central bank independent decision. But I must make sure that right now debate is that, because of this the political elections, I can see that has escalated to different level, interpreting these open market operations also influenced by the fiscal authorities. I have to make sure, I must emphasize, there's no fiscal dominance and influence for our open market operations. We have never had, even in the past. Open market operations were conducted independently by the central bank. We will continue to do that, and that's how we do it. So when we are doing it, our key objective in the short term is to maintain, as I said, call rates within the corridor and at the rates that we think most desirable for the future monetary policy or transition of monetary policy into the broad economy. While doing so, we certainly inject or absorb short-term liquidity with an intention to maintain call rate at the level that, for example, right now is closer to the lower bound of 8.25. It's moving closer. So we want to maintain at this range because it's an accommodative monetary policy stance. We don't want very sharp volatility in short-term rates. We have everything appropriate. If we think there is a pressure in the interbank market that short-term rates is going to move around, going to be volatile, we certainly intervene by injecting liquidity in the short term, overnight or weekly basis, with that objective. That's where from time to time, and there are several ways we inject liquidity in the market to stabilize short-term rates. One is our foreign exchange operations. When you buy foreign exchange from the market, we certainly inject rupees into the interbank market. That will create some liquidity in the market, and at the same time, some other operations. Currency in circulation, currency going out of the system, create a deposit in the interbank market. The credit deployment by the commercial banks create some liquidity shortage in the interbank market. That is where we assess this on day-to-day basis. We estimate liquidity on daily and weekly and monthly basis. We have planned what kind of injection we need what kind of intervention we need in the forex domestic rupee market. Accordingly, we intervene independently without any influence from anyone else. Just I want to make sure at this point. And when some people see our interventions, looking at only one part of that, interpreting that this is money printing. And also I want to ensure through operations, we will not want undue monetary expansion, which is what was happening before this act. When the Minister of Finance write a letter to buy directly the treasury bills for the central bank, there's no control on the monetary expansion, direct purchasing. We don't have that. Even this market operations, we are mindful about the unnecessary expansive monetary base that we take into consideration while having short-term objective of maintaining short-term interest rates where we think appropriate. So that is a clarification I would like to make here, because it's our responsibility to explain what we do and for all of you to understand what our operations, how those are basically taking place, and what independence and of the central bank, how we operate. So that's where I think, as my earlier statement, this is not unusual, and under the best monetary framework we ever had, we are operating in that framework, and this is a prudent practice of all the central banks around the world to manage day-to-day liquidity in the domestic currency markets. So then, just move into other area that's our exchange rate. I already mentioned, talk about this, about the level of reserves, external buffers. We have been able to maintain almost close to $6.5 billion right now. So we are in the, also we want to build more going forward to have strong external buffers. So in the short period, for example, now this year, we have purchased so far from the markets, the foreign exchange, $2.3 billion. This is highest ever purchases central bank has done in the history within a 1 year period. Still, we are in the process of building up our reserve. This year is going to be more. And in addition, this reserve build-up has been helped also by some of the inflows coming from multilateral agencies like IIF, International institutions like IMF, World Bank, and ADB. And obviously, we certainly maintain, as our monetary framework, the flexible exchange rate regime going forward. So, small remarks, some area on the fiscal consolidation. This is a root cause of the fiscal macroeconomic imbalance. On the fiscal front, there has been very positive developments so far happened during the last 2 years in terms of, the reducing the deficits in terms of overall fiscal deficits, and also moving into a surplus in the primary account of the fiscal balances, and also significant increases in revenue mobilization is a very positive development. And also implementation of the cost-reflective pricing mechanism that has eased the burden of the treasury financing, direct financing settlement prices, as well as the easing the burden on the banking sector, financing all the loss-making enterprises through banking system. That all have been now addressed. There will be no more direct financing for state-owned enterprises to cover the losses of the state-owned enterprises. And also there will be no more, we have asked banks to reduce their exposures to large exposures to state-owned enterprises under the new Banking Act. So we have given them time, so there is cost-reflective pricing mechanism, and they should be able to reduce their exposures. And those corporations should be able to mobilize their whatever financing from broader banking sector, not necessarily from two state banks. So this revenue-based fiscal consolidation path has been working well, and tax policy reforms also now is continuing. Another part is external debt restructuring. As I said, since we announced temporary debt standstill with an intention to restructure sovereign debt obligations, we come to a almost final stage of completing external debt restructuring. I think I'm very confident that we should be able to complete and provide the necessary space for the sovereign, the government, for their external debt servicing, and also have sufficient space for them to spend in other areas more than debt servicing for next several years, so that we have a sufficient time and space for the country to move into a growth path. Let me just make a few comments on the financial system stability, which is also our responsibility, the mandate, the key responsibility of central bank. Obviously, financial sector, it endured difficult macroeconomic conditions in the last 2 years, remained resilient amidst this crisis owing to proactive and prudent regulatory actions that we took. There was a period, and there was a lot of concerns, especially by the international financial agencies like World Bank, IMF, that whether we are going to end up with a banking crisis, with the sovereign debt crisis and state bank exposures to sovereign, as well as a deteriorating asset quality of the commercial banks overall, and an impact on the debt restructuring of the exposures to ISBs and the foreign currency obligations of the banking sector to the government. So we have been working very hard with the banking sector, and we have prepared a lot of things. And then now we are very confident that banking sector has strengthened their resilience and also stability in terms of all the indicators going forward. We are confident that banking sector will come out, and all the indicators are now moving to capital, liquidity, stage 3 loans are in the recovery path. And in between, we brought in several important reforms in terms of amending the Banking Act. Now, the new Banking Act strengthened regulatory and oversight supervision of the central bank. We provided regular guidance in the banks and non-bank institutions for capital and liquidity. And also we conducted asset quality review independently by all large banks. And now we see, based on the analysis and forward-looking dynamic stress testing that tool we have to assess banks' stability even going forward, we are confident that banking sector, other than two state banks, they can build their own capital without any capital infusion from the taxpayers' money. Two state banks obviously need some capital support from the government because they are restructuring their obligations, medium to long-term CPC loans, and some of the ISB exposures. Restructuring, they will have some impact, but government, as you know, in the IMF program, allocated 450 billion if needed to support recapitalization. But our latest assessment, we may not need that much, is even 1/3 may be sufficient to address any capital shortfalls arising out of foreign exchange restructuring. Foreign exchange debt restructuring of the two state banks is much better than anyone expected earlier. So soon after the parliament, I think the established that will take place. And then with that, other remaining part of the foreign exchange debt restructuring would be completed by the end of this year, so that from next year onwards, government can go in a much easier and less burden in terms of debt servicing. And our banking sector also will be strengthened so that they can support the economic recovery process, which much more confidence with sufficient capital and liquidity in the banking system. I don't want to talk too much. And then other one is the Banking Sector Social Provision Act. This was also passed by the Parliament with an intention to establish a resolution framework. If there's any resolution issue comes up, we are ready with the existing framework, with the resources. We can quickly move in. I think that's also concern we had. I don't hope that we have to use that resolution framework. In case if there's a support, we have now much more confidence. We have a resolution framework in place with official empowerment for the central bank as a resolution authority of financial institutions, both banks and non-bank financial institutions that comes under our supervision. That framework is in place. Any resolution issue comes up when it comes to regulatory institutions, a central bank, we have a very strong, robust framework in place so that we can move quickly and address any concerns arising out of not the liquidity, the solvency of any financial institution. So finally, let me conclude. Sri Lanka now has rebounded faster than expected from the economic crisis. However, building a stronger, more resilient economy requires a collective effort, both from the monetary authority, fiscal authority, and the other stakeholders, including the private sector and the public. Foundation has been strengthened for economic stability already. It is time for focusing on more growth enhancing reforms now. So stability part almost complete. Now its next phase of development is to enhance growth and expand the capacity to grow by implementing all the structural reforms necessary to enhance the capacity of the country to grow. To ensure the success of these efforts, it's imperative for the private sector in this country and investors to play an active role to create sustainable inclusive growth and development going forward. This is also imperative to maintain debt sustainability and debt servicing capacity of the country beyond the IMF program, which is supposed to end 2027. Beyond that, there are long period of long period debt sustainability under the subsequent program that will certainly help for us to maintain medium to long-term sustainability. Thank you very much.